All right, so welcome, Craig, to the I'll call it second edition of the Texada Unplugged podcast slash fireside chat. Welcome and thank you for taking the time to speak with us. First, why don't you just for the audience, just let us know, who you are, what you do, the company that you're working with and driving, and a few little tidbits.
Yeah, sure. Mate, thank you. Good to be here too. My name's Craig Kesby. I'm the CEO at Inauro. We're an industrial software company. So we aggregate bits of data for people in an industrial sense, get that together, sync it up with all the other important bits of business information they have, and then take action from that. So fire off things out to the other systems they need to get people to do work, do something with it. The whole idea of that is to try and close off that loop in an industrial sense where people are trying to find better ways to do things, try and find more efficiency, find a better way to use all the different bits of technology that are popping up out there today. But do that in a way that doesn't mean they've got a forklift and operation of hundreds or thousands of people. So we're a big believer in the ecosystem of tools and bits of software and technology that are out there already. And our aim is to be really good at plugging in to all of those bits and bridge those gaps, get rid of those silos and remove some of that friction from getting these changes and improvements deployed into an operation and let people realize some of the value from the technology that's out there. So we're want to be a really good partner to some of the bits of software like Texada that people are already using in their business and play a key role to getting the job done.
Awesome. And where are you located in Australia? What
Yeah,
market?
we're Australian. I'm not sure if that's good or bad these days, but we're Australian. The originally most of the crew, we've got an office in the US now in Dallas, and building the team up over there. So we're just starting to expand a bit more. We have a few. We serve multiple industries, which is good. The whole idea of sort of industrial asset management, the software doesn't really know the difference between an excavator and a truck on the road or a cool room in a restaurant. So that's good. The capability is pretty portable across a few different things. So we've got a few different partners we're already working with in the US, but there's plenty of opportunity there for this we're finding. So we're growing the team in the US and growing these partnerships to make sure that we're tied up with the right people in the ecosystem where we can add value pretty quickly to stuff that's in place. So that's the goal at the moment.
Okay, great. Definitely a global footprint. And it's also interesting on the, I'd say, intersection of the technology to different industries and how it is in some ways it's a widget is a widget and how you apply that within the workflow is most important versus, customization for every single industry. I'm
Yeah.
interested, what got you interested in the intersection of heavy equipment, IoT, and automation?
Yeah, look, my background's technology, so I worked on the communication side of technology for a long time, so the network part of that. So I worked for Ericsson.
Mm.
So we're building the networks and things that a lot of this technology uses to get from somewhere to a person to a piece of equipment or machinery. We were looking at all this technology capability that had been around for a very long time. And I couldn't see it having the sorts of benefits or getting the adoption that we were expecting to see in some of these industries, particularly, equipment rental and heavy equipment rental and construction. And ignorance is a pretty powerful tool. So I got to talking with a friend of mine who I'd met who was in an equipment rental business in Australia. And I was saying, well, why are you not using more of this? Why are you not making more? He probably already knew the answer. He said, why don't you come in and you see for yourself? And it took about 90 seconds, I think, when I got in to see the problem wasn't one of technology. The problem's just one of scaled operations. How do you apply that technology across a scale that is particularly in equipment rental? The huge number of suppliers involved in different types of equipment and capability. Lots of branches, lots of people, lots of customers in that mix as well. How do you get anything in such a way that you can roll it out across an operation and provide value to the operation and value to end customers as well? So I saw pretty quickly that this wasn't a technology, wasn't a problem of the technology per se. The capability was there, just its application into operations in a way to be useful, was where the sticking point was. So luckily, we were in an environment then inside an equipment rental business where we had a couple of smart people around us, and said, look, let's have a go at this. Let's see what we can do here. And that's how we got started, was just, let's see if we could solve this problem from inside a business, not from outside. So we set about that, and it was pretty obvious early on what the issue was. We walked into one branch, and on a branch manager's screen on his desk, around the outside of his screen are all these post-it notes. There are about 20 different post-it notes. Know the logins and passwords to all the different OEM telemetry systems that he had access to, which still represented about a third of the fleet that he had. So I asked him how that went, and he said, not very well. If somebody opens the door fast, and it's when these blow off and they go around, so we're not really using it. It's the capability is there, but I just can't operationalize it into the flow. So it was a pretty in-your-face example of, okay, I see what the problem is here. Individually, these are all useful and great, but try to aggregate it together in an equipment rental operation, and that's where the challenge comes in. So we saw that first real challenge was just, is there a way to bring all of this stuff together, and keep true to the underlying capability? I guess that was one of the things we found. There were lots of solutions that said, oh, we'll bring it all together, but it was sort of lowest common denominator type stuff. And we knew that the information and capability of a generator was greater and a lot more useful to some people than the information that would come off a small forklift, or a vehicle was completely different to a scissor lift. And there's a lot of different capability and different info. So if you go to lowest common denominator, you sort of lose that richness off the top of all of these bits. So we couldn't find anything that would do the job that was out there off the shelf. I think we're inherently lazy. We were looking to buy something rather than build something to start with. But it turns out we couldn't find anything that did the job. So like I said, we were lucky. We had a couple of smart people. They got into it, and away we went. We built some stuff up, and then we were aggregating all of these different bits of equipment together, bringing them all in. They were all true to what their capability was underneath, and that was great. And the branches still weren't using it. So it was, we discovered that, like most good learnings, you discover the problem you think is in front of you isn't actually the problem. So it turned out the next step, and that's where the people like Texada come in. Actually integrating all of that technology with the ERP was the real step change in terms of adoption. It took everything from being known as a serial number or a manufacturer's number to the actual language and number and context of the business. So once we realized that and started that integration, away things went, because then we could, as new equipment was added to branches, we could automatically add it in and provision it there. We had all the naming and categorization. We could see when it was on hire. We could see who it was on hire with. We could contact those people. So that was all the richness of that context inside the operation that made a difference. Once we did that, away things went inside the branches. So we didn't need to roll out use cases then. The branches and operations people were finding their own ways, because they hadn't had this before, this capability to bring together all the business structure of all their ERP data and marry that together with all the real-time info they were getting in a dynamic way to then start to do things. So off they went, which was great. It was good to see. So I would say for us, the most important, whilst we integrate lots of different systems and bits of technology, from telemetry devices to checklist applications and things, still the key one in almost every operation we do, no matter what industry it's in, is syncing up into the ERP or into the asset management system is the key piece to really unlock a lot of value there. So that's what got us started.
Okay. I mean, it's no secret that adoption to new processes and technology is a challenge. I know that, it's pretty industry agnostic as well. Even high tech industries have still challenges adopting new technology. Did you see in that example? It sounds like the branches had a pretty open arm approach to adopting new processes and took advantage of it. Were there laggards that, need a little bit more convincing that, made it a little bit more challenging? And how did you
Um,
overcome that?
yeah, look, I don't think that too many people out there want their job to be harder than it needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think if you can demonstrate something's going to save you time or make your job a bit easier, I think people will, we've found people lean into that. The other thing is we try to operate in the background as much as we can. So we're not almost always, we're not some new app that somebody's got. That's just the same tool they were using before has a new work order arrived to go and do this thing. I don't know where that came from as the person in the operation. It just happened to be us, but they don't know that. So we try to be as light touch into the operation as we can, because that helps that adoption, because people they're following the processes they're doing the things they were. There's just different stuff coming at them now that's, hopefully geared towards, here are the most important things you need to do right now for the operation. This is, this needs to be serviced, this needs to be maintained, this needs to be fixed, this needs to be moved or sent here. So we try to operate like that. But one of the things we did early when we were building the software, we moved all the developers to a warehouse right next door in with one of the branches. So it was on the yard. So as they were building stuff early, they could take it out and sort of talk to the team in the yard or the branch manager or hire controller about stuff. And there was very direct feedback most often about whether things were useful or not. And that was a great, for us, again, we thought it'd be useful. We didn't know how good that would be, but it was great to have that really immediate feedback loop to a bunch of developers who weren't experienced at running these businesses to go, yeah, great idea, won't work, no one will ever do it, move on. Or, good if it did this other thing. So we sort of tightened up that feedback loop. And we were lucky to be in a position to be able to work like that. But that helped us make sure that stuff was valuable. Because look, we know rental and construction businesses, even more so, pretty low margin businesses. Stuff has to make money and be beneficial straight away. There's no point talking to someone in one of those businesses saying, hey, I can save you some money or make you some money in 3 years. Stick with me. And like the time cycle is much shorter for people. So you need to be able to get in and be valuable pretty quickly. So we sort of always took that approach of let's try and do this so that we know when we hit the ground and get some stuff going, there are some quick ways to get value generated out of what we do. So what are those key things that we can pick up early? So we were lucky in that. But yeah, there are still, we see people who are sometimes a bit reluctant to, and I think you'd have seen this too. Some people have been burned over the years. They've tried things out or, they saw something and, they lent into it and went, let's give this a go. And maybe it was something that wasn't quite ready for the industry they're in. And, they spent a bit of money and didn't get the outcome. And so I think what we see more is not that people are reluctant to change. They're just a bit skeptical about, yeah, I've heard, you're going to solve all the problems in my operation. Before I heard that, 3 other times this morning, I've heard that from different people who've turned up here. So, join the queue of people that are going to, solve all the problems in my world. So I think there's a healthy piece of skepticism to that from people. So I think it's important. The more we can bring some confidence back into this space by, some of the different companies in here working well together and, showing that we can realize and, deliver on those things, that'll help build that confidence back up. So I'm hoping we're starting to do a little bit of that and improve the perception around some of this technology.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I guess, like, what would you say in your experience or what you've seen thus far is a good example of where skepticism has been removed or eroded, and you've seen some real, mind shift change within some organizations or even, flat out industries?
Yeah, uh, I think the idea that this needed to be solved by one company providing me with all the hardware and all the software and all of this, and I had to forklift my whole thing and go with one person to do this. I think that's been broken away over the last few years, and people go, no, this is an ecosystem, and I I can use different bits of capability here and bring them together. So I don't need to go to the expense of one person, solving this problem, me changing everything, and then being locked into a single, supplier for everything. So I think we've certainly seen that drop away a bit. I think it's also just one of those the weight of numbers type thing goes into. People are just seeing demand on the customer side. They're seeing capability drive in from suppliers. They're seeing other companies start to implement things and seeing some benefits appear. So I think there's also just that general maturity that comes as some of this stuff, some of the operational usage catches up to the capability. And you start to hear a bit more about people going, well, hang on, they're getting a benefit out of that, and that's saving them some time, and they're, there's 100 less, people jumping in a vehicle to go look at something a day across their business. If you times that over a year, hang on, there's real money going on here, and real time saving and efficiency. So I think there's, well, I would say somebody asked me a few weeks ago, and I said our conversations with people now are far less about education and more about implementation. So I think the general understanding and knowledge of what's capable has lifted, and more people are going, all right, well, what's the best way to go about doing these things? Where I'd say a few years ago, it was still a bit of, well, what are we talking about here exactly? So that's certainly changed as well.
Yeah, it's interesting to call out like I call it the maturity of adoption and like operationalization of the solution and how it's had an impact overall. Definitely seeing competitors improve and benefit from that technology is one area. I guess one kind of caveat question to that is the customer expectation. So that's also part of the motivation is that, and I know we see it, and I've seen it in different industries as well. When the customer expectation shifts, you have to follow, or run the risk of, not adhering to what their expectations are, whether that's from just general doing business with me and making it easy to do business, or the thing I provide you enables you to do a better job with your own customer. Because now one of my angles is always the sell through to scenario, which is I'm selling, as a B2B marketer, I'm selling through to the end customer's value. So how do I make your job easier for your customer?
Yeah.
Where are you seeing those customer expectations shift, both in your customer expectations, like how are your customers kind of adapting, and then, how are their customers changing how their motivation to move in the next direction of technological innovation?
Yeah. I think that that very first, the foundational piece I would say is people are understanding the value of just awareness of what's going on, that transparency of here's what's actually happening right now. In almost all the businesses we work with, and then their customers that go on, the capital investment in equipment or machinery and things is one of their biggest expenses, and then labor running second behind it. So the better capital efficiency we can get and the better labor efficiency we can get, there's a whole industry benefits from that. So I think there is a push going on to, the more aware I am of what's happening, it's like you can't solve a problem if you don't shine a light on it, you don't know it's there. So I think in that very first, like I said, the foundational piece is let's understand what is happening right now that's out there. And once we have that knowledge of that, is there things we would do differently? What would we do? What would we be aware of? And that's where we've tried to, try to break the cycle where that used to be somebody would run a report at the end of the month and then have a meeting or a workshop and talk about these things that could be done better. And 2 months after the actual activity, someone would say, hey, next time this happens, you need to do this better. But it's so disconnected from when things are happening, you don't really get the benefit. You get a lot of meetings and reports, but not a lot of outcomes there. So we, it's so, some of these are so simple, but they make such a big difference. Where, we do some work at the minute for a rental company. They've got a bunch of light towers on an open mine site, big mining company. People do work overnight, move the towers around, switch them off auto, and the towers would then run all day. Do a great job lighting up the outback Australian sky in the middle of the day. So they burn diesel and, no good. Everybody was reminded over and over again, toolbox talks or pre-start talks, make sure these get turned off tomorrow when you finish whatever. And it was still a big problem. really simple integration because we know who the customer is and we know the towers that are on hire with them. We know the site contacts because we have those. At 7:30 every morning, an SMS goes out to the site contacts with the list of here are the towers that are still on. So they know the ones to go to and fix. So the rental company has nobody involved in that on a daily basis. It's happening automatically in the background. The mining company loves it because now there's some stuff goes through and there's some accountability. Here are the ones that were left on. Here was when people were told to turn them off. If they're still not, we know who didn't do what they were meant to do. And that's happening automatically in the background, just runs every day. If towers come off, they come off that automatically. New towers go on, they go on to that workflow automatically. It's so simple. It's not, there's absolutely, if you talk to a technology person 20 years ago, they'd have gone, yeah, that's really simple. So this is not an earth-shattering thing, but operationally, it was just able to be implemented in a way that wasn't admin heavy. It didn't require people to, get into a system all the time, be updating things. It just runs and does its job. And it saved a hell of a lot of fuel across that many light towers and made people happy. And then the mining company loves it. It's an ESG story, and the rental company's got a customer that's happier because it's just back to that awareness or that transparency of what's actually going on. Once you see that, you can go, hey, there's small things here we can do that seem pretty straightforward, but they can make a difference to the operation. You start to build those things on. That's one piece of equipment on, for one customer on a few sites. You start to run that across the business. And again, if these things can be easily just switched on for that customer, any light tower anywhere in the country that goes on, does work, it just automatically falls into this sort of thing. Because I'm yet to find anybody that's keen to run light towers in the middle of the day. So if we do, we'll tweak it and make it that's an option as well. But so it's things like that I see. And then that, back to that building confidence, it's a real tangible outcome. People see the benefit, they see why people are happy about it, they use it. That then, gets communicated inside the businesses that are involved. What else can we do? What about that electric gear that isn't put on charge at the end of a day? Can we find out what isn't on charge of this stuff? So rather than find out the next morning when we go to use it, we make sure someone's accountable to get it on charge the night before. Bunch of simple hygiene-based things in that first instance of just the awareness. You can then, once you start doing that, like I said, operations people will figure out their own, ways then to go, here's what else we want to know, or here's some other stuff. There's a bunch of use cases then that create value that people can get into that are helpful. So I think that for me, that awareness one, and that, for us, we didn't realize when we started in equipment rental that it's probably the most complex asset management business out there. Again, bit of ignorance on our part. We didn't know that, but it was really good after we built some software to do we think a pretty good job there. You port that into, logistics and transport or cold chain and some of these other facilities management, you go, wow, this stuff's really, really simple compared to equipment rentals. So the software just off it went then. But you do bring back, you made the points about other industries. There's certainly, heavy transport or long haul transport stuff has got a lot of compliance and stuff in place for things, and we've been able to take some learnings about how people do some of that work in other industries and bring it back into. So it's been good or enjoyable for us to be able to see, well, here's something really good happening in another industry. Let's just add that over here as we build the capability up and see how it goes. So I think some of those sorts of things for us, being able to learn from different industries about where there's good parts and not so good, are really useful. And it's also different types of customers. We're really lucky that one of our first customers in the US was Brinks. And, it really heightens that level of, stuff has to work and it has to be robust. And here are all the things that are important when you're working with a company that's moving a hell of a lot of value around every day. So it was good for us on the types of things that are important to them and the stuff that was all those bits around the asset, the driver, the guards, the messengers that they have, the routes that they're on, the firearms they're assigned, the stops that they're making, the pickups or deliveries that they make, all the rest of that context then that we could bring in and build up the value of that awareness of here's what's happening and here's what's going on. Here's where there's too much asset or not enough, or there's better efficiency here. Why is that? What's happening? We were able to then push back to some other systems and things they use. Some of these bits of these learnings and things feed into other places, because we're not trying to, certainly not trying to replace these sources of truth in these other places that people are using, systems that are good at doing those jobs. We just want to get really good at helping them understand each other, and where we can sort of hold enough of that info that we can see the whole picture and then move that out to people that can do things with it. So that's sort of the focus for us.
I like the idea of creating the whole picture, like the visibility piece and awareness.
Yeah.
What challenges or hesitations do you think dealerships and rental companies face when integrating these technologies? Um, you know, one is, I mean, the obvious one to me is cost, especially when you think of the complexity of the operation. I had a recent conversation with a customer, and in that conversation, he talked through, one of the big kind of eye openers when he was walking through the software evaluation was just how he could think bigger down the road and look at the scalability that the solution provided. And, at the level he's at now, it's manageable to go through that pain of implementation of a new process, new solution. Whereas if he waits, and he can slog along for the next 5, 6 years till he gets to the point where he wants to be. But then it's going to be much, much harder at that level to go through that pain. It's like the pain is just much more severe. What would you say to, and again, a lot of the companies that we likely talk to at the same time as different organizations, they're quite large and they're very sophisticated. And sometimes they don't have the level of awareness that they need, but to get that is a huge effort. Like what kind of hesitation do you see when you talk to those companies, and what are they facing? What are their concerns, and how do you help address some of those concerns?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, because like I said, the hesitation for anybody at a senior level in these businesses has been around a while and has come across this sort of technology before, and has had, like I said, probably a checkered history of what's been successful or hasn't, or money that's been spent and whether returns there. I would say that the two main changes to that are supplier capability is changing. So just about every supplier of anything in an industrial context either has telemetry and devices embedded in it that they're putting in as an OEM solution, or they have a PowerPoint slide that talks about how they very soon will have a solution like that in there. So I think that level of capability coming through is higher, which means there's less aftermarket, if you like, or after purchase work to be done by a dealer or a rental company in terms of getting the fleet kitted out with what we need to do that. The second part I would say is the customer expectation piece is increasing. So if you're getting a better level of transparency or awareness, or some efficiency gains, or some more automated activity from one supplier and not from another, you'll start drifting that way. And you can plug that gap with humans for a while. So we see that a bit, people trying to bust themselves to do the work of somebody else that's using technology, and they're, like I said, we've seen people driving around all day checking on the hours on machines and things like that to provide an update for people. And you go, sure, that, like you said, that problem's being solved in the short run, but it's getting worse and worse and worse from an efficiency point of view as you grow. So I'd say they're the two things that are probably not, forcing the hand might be the wrong level, but I think it's hard to stay in the middle of that now as a rental company or a dealer and go, I'll just let this fly by and I won't take in. The other bit that we see now from dealers, they want to know, is they want to get this data themselves, because they're trying to work out, how's my stuff performing in that customer compared to my competitors, or compared to the alternate solutions they might have. So I think people are starting to realize the conversation's getting a bit more sophisticated with their customers about whether they're selling machinery or they're hiring machinery. It can't just be about, well, I've got the quantity or I have this brand. Now that's, there are some strong brands or, great salespeople still in that position maybe. But I think more and more that's becoming challenged. You've got to justify the price differences and the benefits. The more information you have on, here's how our one runs when it's in your business, does this many hours, is that the same sort of hours you get off another one? You get that sort of usage. That a customer's using it like that. Is the time between faults or failures or the servicing or whatever. What is it that's important to that customer that you've then got some data to feed into that conversation? So you're talking about something other than your brand and the price in that. So we're seeing that start to change too, that people want to be a little bit more, have a bit more knowledge of what their customers are doing and be more supportive of that. So help them with that data. If there's better data going back and forth, things like, you see people still, they'll chase spreadsheets about warranty management, for stuff being serviced, things like that. Anything we can do, if you've got a system like Texada sitting there, keeping that stuff all up to date, to get it out into a spreadsheet to send it to different suppliers, is just inefficient. If there's some suppliers that go, no, we've got the ability, we can take that feed, plug it straight in, monitor that, get rid of the spreadsheets. Now people aren't doing that sort of work. They're doing something more productive and great outcomes. So there's a bunch of small things. Like I said, a lot of these are just small tasks when people get in and you see what's happening and you go, look, there's a way to get rid of this when you see the information on the two sides. So I think that that customer experience or offering a bit more to a customers or rental companies and dealers the same, we need to differentiate them more than just this. They know that we're helping them out. If you've got too much gear or we're making it known, you can get some back. We're a better partner for your business. May mean there's one less scissor lift on site this week, but we're a better partner. You're going to prefer us because of this transparency and the assistance we're giving you to manage your business better. Puts us in a better position. So I think we're seeing that come in as a more, people are seeing that as a more valuable piece. Where I'd say 10 years ago, for sure, the idea of telling a customer they had too many scissor lifts on site, would he be mad? The business we're in. So I think that's changing a bit too.
Yeah, that's great. I definitely resonate towards transparency in that customer business relationship because a dollar saved today is another dollar they can spend tomorrow with you when they need it.
Yeah.
And, at least what I've learned in the industry thus far is that relationship is key. It's the thing that keeps them coming back, and part of that is trust. And how do you build trust up in a way that's more tangible?
Yep. Yeah, 100%. We see one of the common ones, again, just to pluck an example, generators, people that overspec generators for sites. So they'll get, way too much power than what they need. What we often see, the amount of times we've seen people will get beaten down, a rental company will get beaten down on the price for a 100 kVA generator to go out on a site. People are peaking usage at, 40 something. Go back to them and give them a bit of a discount and swap it for a 60. Your return on the 60 is better than your return was on the other one. You can redeploy the 100, give it to somebody else that might need it. It's better for the generators. Customers happy, they save some money. You're making better margin on the 60 because you weren't getting beaten down on it like you were when the initial one went in. Good outcome that sits there, but it only comes from being aware of here's what the actual usage is. This thing was just overspec'd at the very beginning. From that, which good outcome, good for customers. Back to the other way, customers that'll hire stuff out and it's on a 12-hour cycle or 12-hour duty cycle, 12-hour shift, and then they're running it all day. And you see that, and then there's a conversation about, okay, here's what's actually happening here. And we can have a conversation about what the rates need to be for that or how that's done. So there's it'll clean up behavior in two ways. Not all just on happy story that the rental company is giving away. Sometimes it's taking back as well in terms of, hey, you weren't going to be using this stuff on the weekend, or you weren't going to be using this 24 hours a day, and look at that, you are. So here we go. So I think there's a bunch of things like that you can build. And again, some people might say, and we do, for some people, bang, put it on higher, like charge them just straight into it goes as a line item, charge. Other people say let the account manager or a branch manager or hire controller know so they can have a conversation because it's this type of customer. So you can choose based on the types of what you want to do. So that's that. the way we like to look at it, we use these three levels. Awareness is the first part. Get everything coming in, everything that you can. Understand what's going on in the operation, whether it's with your customers or your own. The next level up is suggestion. Now that you've got that, what are the things that could be better for maybe the customer or for us, or this could move better, these could be over here, there's not enough. So suggestion comes next, which is where are you still having the people in the business that know, go, yeah, here's the actions we take when we do these sorts of things. And if I see this, here's what I want to do. Then the step above that is control. So once you've got confidence in, we know the types of things, this particular task, we know we're comfortable with that, just let it do it automatically and keep the people out of it for this one, free them up to go do something else, and off we go. So we sort of talk about things in that layered bit. First bit is just get the awareness, get some suggestion running, and the last part is control. If we were a fancier tech company, I'd have used AI all the way through that last part of that, because it's effectively what that is. But in an operational sense, for what we're talking about, that's the piece. And I know what's happening. I've seen some options on how best to do it. Here's the best way to deal with that sort of thing. So just go do that in future. And that's the type of stuff. That's the light tower example we talked about before, the generator one, or the electric gear. That's how you learn and build up those use cases, if you like. But now we just apply it, arrive somewhere new with a new customer. Like I said, how do you get some value early? Bang, that stuff's connected, it's in there, we know it, you can turn that on. That can be on this afternoon for these major customers or these major partners if you want. So that's how that stuff works through. But we sort of think about it in that progression, if you like.
No, it's a good way to frame it out. I think many businesses could benefit from that, let alone one as complex as equipment rental. I think there's even a lesson there about what does the control look like once you have, it's kind of like once you have control of the joystick, it's up to you then to determine where you want to go, and how to leverage it. And
Yeah.
The AI question, it's not a super focus, I guess, for this conversation, but it is an interesting play where so it's a two-part question. Do you think that heavy equipment, we'll call it businesses, are ahead or behind other industries in digital transformation? And where does AI fit into that mix? Because the heavy equipment as a general idea, of the business structure, whether it's a dealership or a rental, is that, there's less AI penetration. Like there's just less, from an everyday worker or everyday employee, but it's creeping in different areas. I know we've released AI products recently and had a few last year. Our approach is to take put leverage the AI technology where it makes the most impact for the worker, for the process, so that it improves the output, but also, it's not displacing people, it's making them better. Where do you see that kind of, transforming itself within the customers that you talk to? And what is your kind of vision roadmap within your own organization to try to apply that? And so again, first part was digital, are they ahead, behind? And then, where do you see the AI kind of component tracking?
Yeah, I think in terms of digitization as an industry, we're behind some others with digital adoption, and more, like I said, in silos. There's good digital adoption across, horizontally across operations and customers and suppliers. We're probably behind where some other industries are. Things, like we mentioned, transport and logistics before. It's far more mature use of those sorts of tools. That pass-through and transparency stuff is there, and the level of detail, that the granularity about what's going on in their operations. So whilst we're behind, I think, like we mentioned earlier, that comes from some of the other challenges in these industries that are particularly, construction and equipment rental and heavy gear. It's, the number of different people involved, both from a supply side to contractors on sites and projects and customers. It's more complex to try and standardize and say, hey, we're all going to work a particular way or use a particular tool, which is up until 5 or 10 years ago, it was we had to all decide we were going to use the one tools, the one common tool and common hardware and common stuff, and then we could work together. And that was just almost impossible to achieve. So I think we're a bit behind, but the ability is there to catch up fast. I would say on AI, there's AI is one of those technology terms that now gets sprinkled over everything, more by no disrespect to marketing people, but it's more a marketing thing than technology. A bit like cloud or internet or IoT or some of these phrases now, digital twin. It gets usurped and used all over the place. I would say the important thing for people to think about now is wherever I might end up with AI, the more knowledge I have of what's going on in my operation and the more data I'm collecting, the better that will be down the track. So I'd say that one thing everybody can do now is that awareness piece that I talked about. Let's make sure we're getting all this stuff together, giving it the context it needs so that it's useful and structured data. I have the statuses for different things I have, because in 3 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years, whatever it is, when I get to some more of this, the better that data is that sits there, the better my result is going to be. And if I just wait, in a few years, I'm going to need to try to do this anyway. I'm just starting later and I have less info. So nobody's going to make a wrong move doing that foundational piece of awareness for now, I don't think. I agree with you. I think we'll see, and we already are starting to see blurring of this, and we refer to it as assistance to people. So the way we're seeing AI come in is, how do we give somebody take out some of the admin heavy pieces or the some of that inefficiency that they've got and replace that with the software, a tool, whether it's an AI agent or the capability of the software. Let's assist with that. So assist service management or a hire controller or a branch manager with some of these tasks to start with, so that we can take off some of that load. Because back to my point before, there are a lot of people out there that when you look in the operations, when things aren't getting done, it's just because people aren't getting to them. So there's more work to be done than there are people at the moment. So if you can take some of that stuff away, the hopper's still got plenty in it to come down. I think if people implementing some of these tools aren't suddenly got service managers or branch managers sitting there going, wow, I've got a half day now. There's already heaps more work they're not able to get to because there's just so much they have. So I think that, and look, that's it comes back to safety, the amount of safety incidents you see, and you go, what was the root cause of that? They were trained, we had a policy, we had a process. The root cause so often is they were rushing. Because they were behind, or there was too much on, or another one of these. So somebody rushed, they cut a corner, and had a problem. So our view is there's this sort of flow-on compound benefit through to say, if we can take some of these loads out and reduce the amount of stuff that sits there that I haven't done yet, then you're probably getting a safer operation just by virtue of that anyway, because you're taking some of that heat out of that. So we're the same. We're not looking at this as you can have branches without people. That's absolutely not where I think this goes. But we can have really efficient branches operating well, operating safely, with people, leaning in, making use of these tools and this capability to get stuff done. And whether that's in a dealer or a rental branch or through to a construction site, and people doing work, or in a facility that they're maintaining or doing industrial shuts on, or things like that. Any of these things that we can help take some of the admin out of that to start with, free people up to focus on the important tasks some more is good. So I think that's how we'll see it. For us, that's certainly the way this is going. When I talk about, awareness, suggestion, control, pardon me, the more we can get really good at helping people inside a business understand, here's how I can take advantage of this to just automate some of these tasks and activities in my business. I think that's important. The thing for us is to make sure we build up. I think we'll see people's operational IP become a lot more important again. I think people are going to really, and we are already seeing it with some people, and we've built in a way to do this. People are going to say, that's great, you do all this stuff, aware, suggest, control in my business, that's great. I don't want the things you learn here though down the track to just filter out and be used to make somebody else's business immediately better too. So I think we'll start to see people treat that of the way that they run their business and the processes they have a little bit tighter again, because it's not just something where, if the technology is there today, it used to be you had to poach a person. I used to have to go hire away somebody's really good area manager or regional manager or something and come and implement all that stuff over here. Nowadays you can get a piece of software and go, yeah, just do the same thing that you're doing over there. So I think that customer data and customer knowledge and stuff, or people will start to protect that a bit more about when we move into processes rather than just the information that you have. And we're certainly building for that so that we can, we might have, our view is in the future, we might have two, businesses we're working with doing the same types of operation, operating at completely different levels of automation because, one's done some different things and has some different stuff than the other one. And our view is you have to protect that because that's a competitive advantage in there. So I think some of those things will start to evolve about how people treat the way they operate and what's important. And I think that'll be the choices around what partners I'm using. Are they, they're helping me, but are they just helping all of my competitors equally as well with what I improve or my unique pieces? So I think that'll be an interesting development as we move on about how much people use that.
Yeah, that's a great point because I think even in any role, I know I've been asked the question within this organization and previous, when you think about AI tools, it's not just as easy as giving ChatGPT to a employee and saying have at it. Like they have to know how to use it, and there's varying degrees of experience and efficacy amongst different groups that can leverage it way easier with better effect. So I do. That is an interesting point to walk through the kind of operational IP and that the contextual awareness will actually improve the ability to have the output that you want. And so moving people won't matter as much as if you take someone that's in the right column as you suggested, where they have much more contextual awareness, that employee would get used to that and then goes to a different entity that maybe does not, and therefore they're just not as effective because they just don't have the data and the awareness that they need to make some of those tools come alive. And I think that's an interesting like employee value to the organizational value equation. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's not my not I'm not smart enough for this, but some stuff that I'd read. There's certainly in an industrial context, you don't want generative AI. You don't want to make stuff up, typically.
Exactly,
so
yeah.
all the generative AI stuff that gets used in marketing or other stuff, great. Go for it out there. When you're talking about your operation, you don't want to be making things up. Typically, you want to use. The other thing that doesn't matter is it doesn't really matter what happens in Europe or what happens in other businesses. It matters what mine and where I am. So you can't just sort of necessarily rely on. So that's why your own data is important because you're trying to make decisions about your own stuff. If the answer is, oh yeah, you need to be using a different supplier's brand of that, you go, well, I don't have a different supplier's brand. I have this one. So that some of that more, I guess, broader AI stuff is not real relevant in an industrial context. So that's why we see that building up your own data, having your own, set of information and awareness and context then and training is important because it's actually your operation that goes. So there's a slightly different twist to it. So I would say when people are thinking about AI, it's not the generative stuff they see today in most use cases. I think industrial AI stuff will be far more specific to the tools will be common, if you like, the capability of the tools, but the data it's working from will be a little bit more contextual and current and customer centric or your own operation centric. So I think that'll be it. But the other thing I would say that's interesting is a lot of the current AI stuff is looking to drag to the middle because it's about where the commonality is or where the think about the bell curve, it's dragging to there. There are a lot of times when you're trying to differentiate yourself to a customer or do something better than the industry, you don't want to be in the middle. You want to be, out one end. So I would say it's just interesting as people start to think about some of this and how they apply it, how that goes, or there'll be some trial. And I think nowadays there are a lot better tools. You don't have to make big bets. You can make, you talked about releasing some products and you'll test things and try and we'll do the same thing. And it's working with partners, back to like you said, partners you trust. that work well, that'll try those things out and stuff will work. So you're not making big bets, you're making small ones, but testing things out is important as that changes. And like I said, in parallel to that, it's just get that awareness and the foundation of the data and what's going on. There's still heaps of, I think about dealers and rental companies. Most of the big rental companies we have, when they've got customers that are on site, every day they're doing a pre-start check on that machine. They're checking it all around and over and everything. There's a bunch of data. So rarely is that shared back with the owner of the machine, which is the rental company.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a huge amount of data sitting out there that they're not even tapping at the moment about what's going on with that machine, what state's it in, what's happening, what's it doing today, where's it going. So, and there's assignments and job sheets and there's so much other data kicking there that sits that isn't shared at the moment. I think we'll see more of that stuff shared to get more knowledge about how you're using our stuff. Is that the right thing for you to be using? There's these other things. And at the moment, there's not a lot of that activity happens, but I think there's data being collected, data's there. It'll help people dig into that a bit more. So like that relationship between the rental company or the dealer and customers can grow because there's more info to talk about. What's the actual stuff you're doing here? Here's how applicable this is, or we've got this other product that'll do a better job for those types of things. If that's what you're trying, if you're more aware of what's happening, there's more context, and your experience then as the dealer or the rental company can sort of come to play a bit more because you're lifting the conversation up more than just, oh, you're off hiring it now. And that's what we're trying to push to with some of this.
So I mean, one thing you called out with the trucking industry, which, the maturity level in a lot of ways was driven by compliance requirements. And, you think about, highway safety and things like that, trying to push some technology into those trucks and into those solutions and to give them that awareness that they need to just monitor for adherence to the compliance measures. Where does ESG kind of fit in that? And if, do we feel like there's any sort of big movement or industry shift relative to that could put the heavy equipment space in a good trajectory for maturity, maybe accelerated maturity as far as the technology goes because of things like ESG and some other compliance measures?
Yeah, I would say certainly trucking in particular is a bit further ahead because there's been focus for years on idling as a fuel inefficiency, both cost and environmental impact of that. And, the US is a great example. You've got, markets like New York where, individuals on the street can take videos of trucks that are idling too long in New York City and then, dob them in and share in a part of the fine, basically. So there's a money-making exercise there. Through to other places where there's, less so. So I think what we've seen, things like based on temperature at a place, your idling rules then are relaxed because, it's a safety thing to keep people, the environment air conditioned so you can go. So technology is helping to refine some of that down to what's the appropriate levels here and what's good. And the more, down to that time on target stuff for deliveries. If you're building up the data, I know the delivery of this, 45-foot, boom lift should take this long. And this is how long were they stopped at site for? How long were we idling for? And that PTO, there's a bunch of different data you can then get to measure. Okay, here's what good looks like. Here's what we should be aiming for. Here's the outliers. Why are those? Oh, it's these customers or these sites or whatever. So that awareness is key to that again. But I think we'll see that same level come through to heavy equipment on sites as well. We're already seeing a bit of that with the move to electric or the move to alternative sources. But I think as there's better awareness about this, there'll be the same sorts of focus come through on, well, how are our operators performing in terms of fuel use on these things? What things are running all day? Pardon me. What things are running compared to the job they had to do or the work that they've done. So it's matching up some of those things I think we'll see wash through. But yeah, we're seeing certainly in Australia now, there's requirements coming in for tier 1 contractors to report accurate use of fuel across all their main subcontractors, and that's working down over the next few years into lower levels in the industry. So I think we'll see those things continue on. And we've always found whilst there's a good ESG benefit, there's always a good cost saving too,
Mhm.
burning less fuel. So that's it's a win-win in that sense. There's some benefits. So I think some of that those processes around improvements for that we're starting to see wash into out of logistics and into the heavy equipment space, and we'll see some more of that. I think mining sits out on its own. It's already, it's fairly mature, very mature in that space. But I think your general construction infrastructure work, renewable work, there's still some areas there that are probably going to see some uplift in this type of activity.
And where, I mean, I guess that because you hit the cost benefit piece, like where have you seen companies? I mean, it doesn't have to be in the ESG space specifically, but where have you seen equipment companies achieve significant ROI from this automation and we'll call it digital transformation? Where specifically have you seen those wins?
Yeah, all sorts of different places. So, like I said, we know, we know dealers that have picked up a lot more servicing work because they were just paying more attention to when machines they'd sold were coming up to a service point, and they could do an outbound piece to people to say, "Hey, you're coming up to this. Let's get this organized for you." And across a big base of users, you don't need much of a percentage there to see an uplift in service work. And parts was the other main one, like improving the amount of parts stuff. Like, here's the service coming, we'll send you, these parts ready for it. Stuff like that. We've seen some benefits too. I would say that certainly from a rental business, revenue to start with, things being used outside the hours they were contracted for, whether that's days of the week or hours of the day, is a big one across some gear. And having enough knowledge to know when that was and for how long, so you can charge. Like we know there's plenty of sites on stuff that we work with where the extra charging for the extra use is paid for all the technology stuff that we and everybody else have provided, 10 times over. And that, so it should be. But there's a ton of money in that sort of stuff. Again, when you're aware of what's going on, and look, people will. It's not always deliberate. Sometimes it's accidental. Stuff just runs over a bit. But there are customers out there who know how much awareness you have of what's going on, and they might take a bit of liberty with that. So there's plenty there. The other one is just that I think it's hard to quantify in dollars, but the customer experience one, that partnership bit, like you said, somebody chooses you. And the way we talk about it, one of our customers told that back to us and said, I've got a customer now who I just have to match anything else. I don't have to beat it. So he goes, it's saving me $5 or $10 on every bit of gear now, a day or a week or whatever it is. Because I've been able to, I just have to match now. I don't have to beat to get stuff because of the service I provide or the partnership we have. And their conversations are, how do I get that where I can be 5% more? And they're still choosing me because of the other value that we bring. So they're trying to drive that. So I think that being a better partner gets you, there's more business comes from that customer experience or customer sat that comes from there. So I think they're the places that we see. There's still the ones that have been around for years, recovering lost gear or stuff that's been stolen. But we, all the way through, we've got some people at the minute that love, you can share the locations of stuff really easily with third-party drivers when they're going to pick something up. So they're not driving around all over the place trying to find something or walking around. You can direct them straight to it. So you can share the details on an asset. Same for service techs. What's the stuff nearby that's coming up for a service in the next 3 weeks because I'm out here now, so I can hit these couple of things rather than come back again to this location in 2 months' time. It's that sort of stuff that they seem small, but back to the scale thing, when you times them by 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, depending, like, it adds up fast on some of these things. So we've got this we're using an equipment rental a bit, an ROI calculator for people, and we've listed like the top 30 or 40 of these use cases that we know are valuable. And some people, they go, I don't run that gear, so you can just take that one out. But so far we haven't had anybody yet put their numbers into that and go, nah, there's nothing in it for me. Thanks, my operation's perfect and everybody's super efficient and it's all running well. So the but yeah, I would say it's a lot of small things. There isn't, there's well, down to the individual. The person that's charging extra for 20 generators that are running longer than they should be every night, he probably feels like this is a making his year. So down to the individual, they feel like big things, but corporately, it's lots of small things that add up that we find across an operation. And that's what these operations are. It's the same stuff in every branch, with every customer. So it compounds real quick. Those benefits is what we see.
Yeah, and especially at scale when you start thinking about even, I go back to your comment about uh, the lighting poles and having the generator work, or sorry, having those like actually with a generator that's burning fuel. It's not just the fuel savings, it's also like the savings on the machine wear and tear. And,
Yep.
even if something goes down at night because it was run during the day, now maybe that operation is hindered for a few hours until they can move another pole into that
Yeah.
spot so they can actually do their job. So efficiency is king all day long.
Yeah. Yeah. It's better for the gear. You get better longevity out of it. Customers happier. So yeah,
Hmm.
they're all good things if you can optimize for that. But yeah, I think we're sort of seeing the people get excited about some of that. Like they're one of the rental companies, the most excited people, the regional service manager for one of these areas, is just coming up with new ways to do things. Can I monitor this? Yeah, because I think I've got a customer doing it. Yeah, you can do that. We can put stuff together. So, and that's great from our point of view. That's where it's a lot of fun because we learn something new and go, wow, I didn't even think of that, but that's awesome. And it's good to see people in an operation engaged with stuff. So I'm not seeing anywhere that we work with that this stuff's driven out of corporate IT, with the utmost respect to corporate IT people. This once the tool gets out and people are using it, they're coming up with their own, and that's what we're going to try and make sure we keep making things so it's easy for people to add in some more. I want to know when this happens, or simple things like let us know if one of the vehicles we have is involved in an accident or a suspected accident, so we can call and say, is everything all right? Do you need something? Can we send somebody to recover the vehicle? Or it's just these are proactive. Like the generator fails on site, we call there's a new one on the way. So that just even that proactivity rather than react to the customer calling and I've just had a problem or this has just gone wrong, changes the relationship there every time. So there's small things like that as well. So yeah, too
Are
many,
there,
too many.
yeah, are there any other trends that you see in that space where, what emerging trends should our customer, mutual customers, keep an eye out for over the next couple of years? I know that again, technology is changing at such a rapid pace that, who knows what's going to happen in 6 months to a year as far as capabilities of the technology. But what are you seeing out there? What are you and your teams envisioning in the next, year or so, on the impact of the customer?
Yeah, I think more more sharing of data around that ecosystem, I think, is what we'll see, and that'll be beneficial. We're working with some companies at the minute, simple things like, high-rise stuff, so crane time and then delivery of stuff to that, so how the trucks are impacting traffic. Having that supplier that's the trucking company have their data available to the site so they can see here's where these things are, something's taking longer, we need to hold off some stuff, or we're okay to call those through. It's just that awareness, not just of your own stuff, but of the other things in the ecosystem that you need so that you can avoid was a high-rise site not far from our office here last year where the local parking enforcement people would just sit at the cafe across the road and wait for the trucks to end up double parked when they couldn't get in, and just wander across and give them a ticket and wander back and sit, and they were doing their yearly number in a week while they sat there drinking coffee watching what was happening. So things like that can be avoided if the data is shared across that. We see that whether it's from cement materials and things that are coming through suppliers. there's safety related stuff, inspections and things. So there's a lot of data on site. So I think we'll see a lot of that at the minute. People want, they don't get, or it's shared via a spreadsheet or something. It's not timely, so I can't use it, or it relies on an individual to remember to let someone know when something happens, but they're busy with their own tasks. So I think there's a bunch of stuff there that we'll see can improve the way simple things can work on site. So I think that's a place we're seeing there's more interest in, if I knew this or I'm aware of this, I can do something a bit differently, or we can get ready for that, or it'll change how we're operating. And I think that's what people want to see. Because again, it's back to that feedback loop. People want to, well, what's happening? How do I, understand what that is and what's going on? How do I make some improvements to that? Actually realize the outcome of the improvements and just do it all again. And I need to be doing that as a business at scale, and at a project here or a branch or a depot there. I need that same thing to be happening. So I need to give the operation the tools that's actually working for us. And we break out of, like I said, that cycle of head office runs a report at the end of the month, sends you a thing on how you should be better next month. And, you just get in that washing machine of stuff that doesn't actually improve. It's the same report, it's the same problem, same challenges again, because it's not tied tightly enough to, it's this task needs to change, or this needs at the time. Like help somebody at the time do something differently, and that's we see that have more benefits. So I think sharing of data is going to be a big one that we see, because it's in people's interest to share some of those bits and work together on some of that a little bit more and be a bit more transparent. That's a better outcome for people. But we're seeing tons of new technology come in with more capability as well. There's more electric gear, battery systems, how people are using energy on things is changing for some of that, and that's interesting. It's changing the way some things operate or what they do. So it's fun keeping pace with some of that in terms of there's new bits of technology with new attributes or data points that come in. But I think there's still a lot of stuff out there. Like we say, there's still a lot of stuff in spreadsheets. There's still a lot of stuff on whiteboards and pieces of paper. So, at the same time as we get excited about the future, we're not getting ahead of ourselves. There's still a lot of that awareness level just to digitize stuff, and let's get the foundation right before we go trying to build too much on top of it.
Yeah, no, I agree there. If you could offer one piece of advice for heavy equipment dealers, rental companies hesitant to adopt more advanced technology, like what would you say to them?
I think that back to that thing before, try and find places to make small bets, try stuff out with things. So, and work with partners where that's not upfront investment. The model that we took from the beginning is we're a cloud software piece. We're not a big implementation. There isn't an upfront charge. You don't pay for us to develop stuff to get started. We'll normally, to back up what we say we can do, we'll deploy stuff into an operation, get it working for them before they're paying us for it, to prove out some of these use cases actually work in their operation. So, we're not Robinson Crusoe there. Find some partners to work with where you can try things out and see it and make sure. And lean into some of these things when you see these use cases of benefit in other places or other industry. Go, wonder about that here. Let's give it a try. It doesn't need to be a whole of operation process. So I think a lot of people are reluctant to start because they are, we need to review our entire operational there and IT this and that and something else. Treat it as just an input into that ongoing process of how we make stuff better. So let's learn something here about how this works. Let's give this capability to this top customer. It's not right across our business yet. It's just here, and let's see how they respond to that and what we learn from that. So I would say try things out, even if it's just on a small scale, preferably on a small scale to start with, to build confidence in your own operation in it. But this doesn't have to be it's a 3-year project with a ton of money set aside for that. We're not going to see any benefits for ages. This technology now in this space, in this ecosystem we're in, there's lots of little bite-sized bits that you can deploy. And the good thing about dealers and rental businesses, they're quite geographical in nature. You can carve off an area or some branches and say, let's have a look at something here, or a customer and say, let's try this out here in this place and let's see and learn something. this works great for us. This is not ideal for us unless it tweaks like that. But I would say the only thing you could do wrong at the minute is to wait and do nothing, because you're still going to have to learn some of this stuff just down the line a bit more, and then you're catching up and rushing. So I would say there's enough pieces there that it's not an expensive thing to, like I said, to start with, to test out. It should cost very little other than some time. But then as you build that up and the confidence is there and you're seeing the value, then you can sort of roll it out in a measured way that you go, look, I know this is returning to the business, so I've got better confidence. So I would say just pick some of those things, take off some bite-sized chunks, make some small investments of time and try some things out. Within the back of your mind, the awareness piece, just think about building up all of those pockets where there might be no data, or it's dark, or you can't see stuff, or these things. I don't just mean telemetry off equipment there. I mean, whether it's inspection related data or whatever else it is that's important, try and make sure those things are digitized and captured and synced on the way through. Doesn't matter how fancy the tool is that does it, but get that done. Work with your partners on what are they seeing, solve these problems. And as you're trying out some of these new things, just think about lifting that level of what data I have that I'm capturing on the way through, so that in 12 months time, I'm in a better position. I know some more things about what works and doesn't work, and more of my stuff is I got less little dark spots in the business, or, clouds where I can't see anything, or bits of missing data. So I'm in a better position than I was 12 months ago.
Great. That's great advice. And, I also think that, there's opportunities within the partner networks that we have to try to exploit, some of those, opportunities to explore and, advance your operation in areas that you feel maybe have better lift with some help, and, keep the traditional spaces where they are for now, and take your time and be choosy where you have the most risk, but then, again, move fast, because someone else is going to be right behind you, not being calculated. And, whether they bump through it in the night and they make some mistakes or not, they will get somewhere. And if you, don't move now, you're going to be playing catch up.
Yeah, I think I think there's, because the same as, we're thinking about how this technology affects our business. I know Texada certainly is, and what you're deploying, the rental businesses are, the dealers are, your customers all are too. Like, everybody is thinking about this now, and I think there's probably a lot of people going, should I be doing more? Like, are there other people doing more in this space than me? Are they further ahead, or what's actually happening here? And so I think the more there's some sharing around inside those partner groups of this, and here's what we can do, and here's the capability, and just share that knowledge at this early stage about where stuff is up to and the challenges people are finding, whatever, that's good too. So keeps but there isn't anybody that's not thinking about how this goes. So I think that means there'll be customers happy to work with you in a friendly way in terms of, let's see the benefits of this or not. Like, there'll be no shortage of people that'll be happy to work in that partner way, rather than just turn up and say, beware of people turning up saying, yeah, if you write a big check, we can solve all your problems for this, because that mightn't be straight up and down the line, I don't think. So yeah, find good partners that customer side, supply side, technology side, that to work with, try some things out, and just focus on moving things forward. In 12 months, I want to have more of my data digitized. I want to have tried some of these things, created some benefits for customers, so I'm a bit further down the line, and I know where the value is here.
That's great advice. Well, I know I've learned a lot from talking to you. We've had a good conversation now for over an hour. I think taking your framework to heart on the awareness, suggestion, and control is something that, I think a lot of listeners, readers, I know my team definitely, both of my own, org plus the Texada team as a whole could benefit from that structure. So I think that's a big takeaway for me, and hopefully others. But there's lots more in there. So, we'll provide as much as we can as far as transcripts and the ability for people to leverage this. But I thank you again, Craig, for taking the time to speak to me and speak to our customers. And as a trusted partner with us, I look forward to more conversations and customer wins in the future.
Yeah, me too. No, I really appreciate the conversation. That was good. So hopefully there was something a bit useful in there. But yeah, always happy to have a chat.